What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Human Proof Designs podcast. Today we are with Greg from Empire Flippers. Greg, welcome.
Thanks for having me here, man. I'm glad to be here, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some value to your audience.
Nice. So you just came out with this pretty interesting report it's officially called the Empire Flippers State of the Industry report, and this is something. I think it's like 80 pages that I'm assuming you wrote a lot of.
Yeah, it was a burden of love. The first draft, it was like 19,000 words, and then I had to rewrite a bunch of it to fix some different points in it. It's still about 19,000 words, so probably like 25,000 words deep, but it was a labor of love, and I think it's really the first of its kind. So I'm super excited to talk about it and share, what we found. But yeah, it's 84 pages, but if anyone in your audience wants to see it, it's pretty easy to navigate to the parts that are most relevant to you.
Yeah. And I mean, even though it's such a large document, we'll call it, it's interesting for people. People are going to read it if they're interested in it, right? So it doesn't really matter what it is. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that we'll go over in the call today. But before getting there, I think I want to know a little bit more about Greg, and I think the people on this call want to know a little bit about yourself. Like, what is your role at Empire Flippers? What do you do, and how did you even get to working there?
Yeah, it could be that, depending on how I say it, could be a very long-winded story. So feel free to stop me. But what I am right now is I'm the director of marketing at Empire Flippers, and so what that means is my main task is to oversee all of our marketing in the company, all the initiatives, make sure our projects are going correctly, and ultimately growing the brand, and ultimately making it easier for buyers and sellers to buy and sell their online businesses. I've been with the company now for about 3 years, a little bit over 3. I started off as just an apprentice like anyone else, and before that, I was in a much different life. I was an oil field roughneck in Alaska in the Arctic Circle, and I did that for many years. Always trying to get into the online money making space, internet marketing. It was a passion of mine, and I'd kind of given up completely on ever thinking that this could ever be successful. Some people don't get to play in the NBA, and I thought, well, this is my fate. And so I started writing articles, PBN articles, actually, because I bought all these info courses and I had to pay off the credit cards from these. Like, some of them were pretty bad info courses, some of them were pretty good. Pay off the credit cards, writing PBN articles, and that snowballed into bigger and bigger clients until eventually I started ghostwriting as some known people in the space. And I got this new inspiration. I was going to build my own affiliate site and start a new career, a new chapter in my life, selling those sites on Empire Flippers, because I knew about EF way back in the day when we were called AdSense Flippers. And Justin sent out an email looking for a content manager. Like, there's a job I'll never get an interview for, and I applied for it, and happened to get the interview, and then happened to get the job. And a couple months later, quit my oil field job and went to Vietnam. I had a funny story there with my boss in the oil field. I told him, Brian, I'm quitting, and he's like, oh, thank God, because right now the oil is crashing. I'm gonna have to lay people off. So you got a new job? That's good. Maybe it saves someone. So what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm going into marketing. He's like, oh, you've always wanted to do that. Where at? Like, well, they're bringing me out to Vietnam. He's like, is that a real job? So he was a really good boss. He was afraid for me for a moment of what I could just got myself into. But yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, man. I absolutely love what we do. I love that we help people, really live a better life through our products and our services. With whether it's them buying a business or letting them quit their job, or selling a business that enhances their lifestyle in some way. It's something I'm very passionate about. I think it's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally remember AdSense Flippers, listening to those early podcasts back in the day, and going from, what was it, a business process outsourcing, a BPO company, I think it's called.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I remember the whole history there. So it's kind of gone full circle, and you guys have grown a lot since then.
Yeah, I was employee number 4, number 5, and now we're up to 57 people. And just recently at a conference, I broke this conference, DCBKK, Dynamite Circle. They know us very well there since our AdSense Flippers days, and I actually broke out the old the old logo of the guy with the Hawaiian shirt, like flipping a coin on the beach, wearing the crown, as our giveaway shirts, which was very popular. The nostalgia shirts.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. So what about what kind of deals happen on Empire Flippers? Yeah, like what kind of stuff goes on there? Like what can people expect when they go on to Empire Flippers and they're kind of looking for sites, let's say?
Yeah, so Empire Flippers is a extremely user-friendly marketplace. We're the number one largest curated marketplace and really the leaders in M&A when it comes to online businesses specifically. But with that said, even though we are the leader in this kind of stuff and we're doing seven-figure deals, we are still an extremely friendly market for someone that's just coming on. Maybe they have a few tens of thousands of dollars to buy their first deal. We're very approachable from that end as well. And same for sellers with smaller sites as well. We're very user friendly for them. So on our marketplace at any given time, we typically have close to 100 deals that are being sold. So we have some of the best deal flow in the industry, and those deals range from your Amazon affiliate site and AdSense site, really content sites in general, to every form of e-commerce you can think of, from drop shipping to Amazon FBA, a mixture of them, or even FBM, fulfilled by merchant but still on Amazon, to even more esoteric businesses like Merch by Amazon is one that we see quite often, and then even Kindle publishing businesses, which is a much more strange one that you don't see very often. But yeah, we get quite the range of online businesses.
I have never looked into a Kindle publishing business. Actually, I would imagine that's probably a decent business because it's pretty passive.
Yeah, it's cool. So you're almost like a small publishing house, right? Like you outsource the writers, you have the outlines, all that stuff, and usually you're paying the writers by word or whatever, and they're ghostwriting underneath one or several different pen names of the publishing house. And that's kind of how those businesses are usually structured. So if you understand how to write to market in the fiction or even nonfiction space, it can be a quite a decent business.
Awesome. So whenever I arrive onto Empire Flippers, I kind of look at, I think the majority of the transactions that you guys do, would you say that they're mostly content sites?
Now, if you had asked me that question probably 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely yes. What has happened in the last 2 years, we've seen a huge explosion in the e-commerce space. So now that is not so much the case. So the vast majority of our, or a large portion of our sites are still content sites, but e-commerce is definitely starting becoming the leader when it comes to what we're actually selling.
Okay, cool. Let's bring it down to basics then for people, in terms of how their businesses are valued. So let's take an example. I know that we've got some listener questions here, so I'm actually, I usually don't bring out listener questions this early, but it's super relevant for right now. What is it? I think Carl Schaefer is asking, what are the steps to take when selling a site? Is there a formula to finding out what a website is worth? So essentially that was my next question was, how is online business valued? Let's maybe break it down in terms of like affiliate sites, like content businesses, and let's say drop shipping sites and lead gen sites. Maybe if you can give me those three.
Yeah, so with content sites, so in our report, we've broken down all the business models into basically 3 sections. So there's content that includes most of what you just said, and then there's e-commerce that would obviously be the drop shipping portion. So I guess I'll talk about the content side a little bit first, though there's a lot of overlap here, obviously. When it comes to selling the site, the main thing you want is to make sure that the financials are all clean. Like this is especially important in e-commerce where you don't necessarily have a nice affiliate dashboard that just tells you what your numbers are. So you want to make sure you have a really good profit and loss. You want to make sure everything is clear, that there's no weird things happening in the financials or even the traffic, or if there is, you should be able to say like, oh, this bump happened because I was running Facebook ads, or I was doing this new SEO test, or this dip happened because of a seasonal thing. I see it every year. You have the explanations there, so that's all helpful. A basic formula for your users is, so if we look at content sites in the State of the Industry report, let me just click on that here. And we just go by purely by averages. So the content category, we rolled up all of the Amazon, AdSense, and even lead gen into just content in general. If your readers want to check out the report, there is subsections broken out for Amazon associates, affiliate, and AdSense as well. But the average multiple right now, in as of last year, was 27.17. So if you want to take like just purely by average of what my business might be worth, take your last 12 months of net profit, and average that out. So let's say, just for easiness, it was $1,000 a month, something like that, and then times that by that 27x multiple. That will give you a fairly good ballpark range of where you're going to be. Now, that is also saying your site is average, and you might have a below average site or a much higher quality site. We've seen Amazon associate sites, for example, sell as high as for 39x. I think we might have one that's a little bit higher as well. But so yeah, you can definitely get much higher above that average. You can also get much lower below that average if you have a poorer quality site. We also have our valuation tool that if you want a closer estimate without doing any of the process or anything like that, if you can just go to empireflippers.com/valuation tool, or just Google it. It's very easy to find. And you can enter in all your information. You'll get a closer ballpark there. But some of the things that do help you with that is, diverse traffic, diverse revenue, age, and even your net profit. Because as your average net profit goes up, on average, your business is going to be worth more in terms of getting a better multiple, just for the very fact that you have a higher average net profit.
So, assuming that somebody has good financials, I would, I'm going to guess that, if most folks at a most basic level, it's pretty much like a Google spreadsheet.
That's typically what they are. There's nothing fancy.
Yeah. I mean, I have my own stuff, but like I use Xero and things like that. But the spreadsheets is actually quite nice because you're really more attached to it in a way, rather than just pressing OK on stuff. But anyways, so there are things known as ad backs. So maybe you can talk to folks about what an ad back is and when and how that comes in line with the valuations.
Sure. Before I move into ad backs, if your audience was wondering what the average sales multiple was for drop shipping, because you asked me about that, it's 25.13 right now. So that actually has gone up by a couple of points. It was a total of a 5% increase in the average sales multiple for those businesses. So those are seeing some good growth too. In terms of ad backs are fairly simple to understand. So it's as the name would suggest, you're adding back expenses. So say you had a P&L, you're making $5,000 a month, and you spend $10,000 to do a website redesign. So you're technically in the red by 5, right? So in this situation, when you go to sell that e-commerce store or content site, we would look at that web design charge and we would add that expense back into your P&L, because it's a one-off expense. It's not something that the buyer will have to absorb in any way, and it's not really required. Like, he doesn't have to make another $10,000 investment to keep the site as is, right? So anything that is one-off expenses, which typically are like things like web design, typically like putting conferences and travel on your business card and other things like that. Maybe you're even renting your car through your business card or whatever. All that kind of stuff, obviously, we would add back. Also, your personal expenses, so like what you are paying yourself, the voluntary income that you're giving yourself, all of that would go back into the P&L as well. So, because the new buyer, he might pay himself something totally different than what you are paying. It doesn't really affect the business. You don't really need to keep it at the paying yourself that same amount to maintain the business. You might pay yourself nothing if you're buying the business and wanting to just go intensely into growth. Now, one of the more gray areas on ad backs, not super gray, there is, is worth talking about is with content investment. I know a lot of your audience is out there, investing into new content for growth for their site. So if you're doing that, that is more or less probably going to be an ad back nowadays, because we look at that new content that you're adding to the site as a growth investment more so than maintaining the business as is. Since most of the sites that your listeners are probably building are SEO driven, that new content isn't exactly needed to maintain the site as is. Now, if you had a website that is very social media based, where it requires you more like BuzzFeed style almost, to where you have to post like 3 or 4 new articles a day to drive all that social traffic, obviously that'd be a different story. But I don't think that will probably apply to most of your listeners.
Mm-hmm. HPD, Human Proof Designs, and Empire Flippers have like a really interesting relationship, simply by the fact is that we both sell essentially kind of the same thing. Obviously, we're kind of more on the starter end. Some of our sites do earn money actually, so like that's part of the things that are found in the age sites. But you guys are, I would say, probably 20K and up, I believe, is probably the minimum there. Go with that in mind, being like almost thinking like, if somebody buys a site from Human Proof Designs and they want to end up selling it on Empire Flippers, what is the highest, how do they essentially increase their multiple? This is a question that was asked by G Pequinto, and you mentioned, 39x right now is kind of like the high multiple that you're seeing for one of your sites, I think, in your inventory. So like, what does that site look like, and what brings the multiple for a site up?
Yeah, so in terms of the pure just looks of the site, most of the sites that Human Proof Design sell are very similar in design to a lot of the sites we sell on our marketplace. They tend to have portal pages instead of like one long homepage like you see on some very small affiliate sites. So they tend to go more for the magazine appeal, which I think is cool. In terms of increasing that multiple, say you bought that site from Human Proof Designs, you start building backlinks, of course, because if you buy a site from Human Proof, it's well made, good content, all that stuff on there, but you still have to do the actual SEO work, or at least some of it, right? A lot of it's taken care of for you in that the site's already built and the content's there, but now you have to go out and do the backlinks, whether it's PBNs or outreach links, however you want to do that, build some link bait content, that kind of thing, and really start growing that traffic, and then maybe even doing some CRO onto the site. I don't know if you guys add display ads for your audience, but okay, cool. So the next thing I would do as you start getting traffic to that site and you start seeing your Amazon affiliate earnings or other affiliate links earnings going up, I would look into adding display ads like AdSense or Mediavine or what's the other one? AdThrive to your informational content. So one thing that we see a lot is buyers absolutely love buying these Amazon associate sites that don't have or have all this informational content but is non-monetized, because it's an easy win for them, right? They just buy the Amazon associate site, they add display ads on there, it takes them all of an hour, 2 hours, and suddenly they've just increased the monthly revenue by 15%. So it's often a big win for them. Now on the seller side, that's the way for you to win by getting a better valuation, because one of the things that we look for is one, net profit, right? So adding those display ads gives you more money, which ultimately gives you a better valuation with your multiple. But having that diversified income stream also gives you a better multiple, because now you're not just relying on one program. If Amazon shuts you down, your business isn't dead overnight. It's still earning money. It's probably a hit, but it's not a complete hit. It's not a 100% hit where the site isn't making any money. And the same thing goes for traffic. So if you might start off with SEO and you have a niche that is very visual in nature, like maybe is a do-it-yourself kind of thing or some home improvement niche, whatever. You start a Pinterest page and you start driving a bunch of traffic to that, then that's another way that you can improve your multiple, because now you're getting rid of the fear of the Google update, right? Of Google update coming in and doing a medic thing or eating you or whatever their new update is going to be called, that ruins your site's traffic or maybe improves your traffic. But either way, you get rid of that risk. So the more you can do to mitigate what we call critical points of failure, which are, if something happens, if this fails, your business is failing. Like you don't have a business now. As long as you can mitigate that as much as possible, you're going to increase your multiple, sometimes quite considerably.
What what are the people like that buy these sites from you? I think it's always interesting. I know a lot of people that are building sites. I know people that have sold sites, but then there's kind of like this tier above of folks that are
Who are
that are
these people?
these and well, I mean, just to give a little bit of background too, right? Like there's people like Ace Chapman who we had.
Yeah.
Who he had on the podcast previously, who he's got like a portfolio of sites, but I've talked to other people too, and there's like huge equity, like private equity companies that just have these like little sidearms that just purchase these assets and stuff like that too. So I want to learn a little bit about these types of people, because I think it's kind of like aspirational for the folks they're listening on the podcast to get there.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's interesting. I talk to sellers and buyers all the time, and there's often this like, I don't know, miscommunication of who they are. Like a lot of new sellers, like, why would anyone ever buy this? You could just like, I just built this. Why are they buying this for so much money from me? And buyers like, who are these sellers? They have no idea what they have. I can't believe they're selling this thing. So they come from a little bit two different mindsets, right? The builder guy, he's the hustler. He's trying to do everything often on the cheap when you're just starting out because you don't have the capital to do anything yet. But as you grow and you get more skilled, you have more experience and more capital, you can start looking at buying these sites. And a lot of these portfolio buyers and even institutional buyers, what they're doing is they're operating at scale. So it's often a lot easier to go from, say, $1,000 a month to $5,000 a month than 0 to 1,000, just because you have more to work with. When you buy an affiliate site that already is getting a ton of traffic, you can add things like display ads to your informational content and see an instant bump, right? You can't do that with a site that's just starting out with no traffic. The same thing you can do with a site that's established making money is CRO, conversion rate optimization. Again, that's just another thing you cannot do with the site that you started because you have no data to work with. Even you don't even have traffic yet, so you don't know. So one reason these people buy instead of build is a lot faster. It's a proven track record, and they often have teams that are working on several different of their sites within their portfolio. You can almost look at it as they're building themselves an internal marketing agency. So if you ever used a marketing agency or whatever, they can be extremely useful because they leverage things that you don't know, but they're expensive, right? So a lot of these portfolios and institutional buyers, they'll build almost an internal agency that are working on several different of their sites and properties of their portfolio all at once, and that brings down the cost a lot. And again, the economies of scale is very attractive. If you look at the actual ROI on a website, you say you spend $100,000 on buying a single family home. That $100,000, you only put 20% down instead of the full $100,000 that you probably would need to put down on a website, but you're making from that house maybe $300 net per month once you're renting it out. Versus a $100,000 website, you're making about $5,000 net per month. So like the ROI is just crazy intense, and that's what's bringing those people from private equity into our space. They're starting to see like, this isn't a $10 million business, but this ROI is insane. If I can buy a lot of these websites and package them all up together, then eventually I can sell them for even a higher multiple down the road. So that's kind of some of the mindset that goes into these buyers that we're starting to see.
Do you have maybe just a very, very quick short story on anyone that was able to go from that hustler dude, learning WordPress essentially to becoming the guy who has, multiple websites, buying and selling them to a point where it's almost like, crafted shiny object syndrome almost?
A story that comes right to my head. I didn't know him back when he was learning the WordPress stuff, but I know him quite well, and you know him quite well, is Dom Wells. So he's a great example of that, right? Like he started building out a bunch of sites, then he turned it into a service through Human Proof Designs, and eventually grew that. And now he's buying sites with both for himself and for his partners that he's working with there. So I think that is a great example there. And I have seen a lot of sellers I don't know if Dom's ever sold before he bought, but I have seen a very common trajectory is you get this hustler who is starting to make real money, like 2-3 grand a month. Not like crazy, but it's real. Like that's a sizable chunk per month that they're getting. And it's usually like a side project, right? While they're working at a job or whatever. And what I see is, and what I say now too, is like as a site builder, your business hasn't really begun until you sell your first site. And the reason why I say that is that 2-3 grand a month site, you sell that with us on Empire Flippers, you get, I don't know, 65, 70K. That is probably one of the largest, if not the largest windfall of money you've ever gotten in your life. If you're like most people, like you and me or whatever, right? Like 70K suddenly in your bank account, like, whoa, okay, cool. And that you typically only took about 21 days to do by the time you list with us, because most of these sites sell within 21 days. Now that $70,000 applied to the skill set that you now know from hustling, you can leverage so many different services, VAs, outsourcing, software, various tools, and you can probably deploy multiple websites at the same time rather than having all your focus, all your eggs in one basket. So it's something that we see quite often is sellers eventually becoming the buyer.
Awesome. So yeah, we talked about the private equity guys coming in, and that's somewhat of a trend, almost in a sense. It's been going on for a while, but I'm sure it's more visible for you than it is for me. So I think one of the interesting things about that report was the upcoming trends that are kind of going on for content sites. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So content sites in general, let me pull it up here. One of the really interesting things about content sites is that these have always been like a super attractive asset class to investors, right? Because they're hands off for the most part, fairly passive, and they just make a great amount of money without having to have customer service or products or all that kind of stuff. And often there's not even paid traffic associated with these kind of sites. So one thing that we're seeing in the space is for content sites as a whole, so AdSense, affiliate, Amazon Associates, all that good stuff, is we're not seeing like a huge increase in the average sales multiple. From 2017 to 2018, we only saw a 2% increase in the average sales multiple. But one of the very interesting things that we saw is that the average number of days on market fell pretty significantly. And what I mean by that is the time it takes from the time the business is actually listed on our marketplace to sell, from the time it actually is sold, the money is in our bank account, we're about to pay out the seller, fell by 45%, which is crazy. So it went from just 39 days, right underneath 40 days, to 21.59 days. So 22 days or so to sell an average content site for an average multiple of 27x. So if you're making $1,000 a month on average, sell for 27K on our website in about 22 days. So that's pretty cool. And one of the things that this tells me is that we're entering into what could be a very good seller's market. We're not there yet. And the reason why I say we're entering into a seller's market is if you look at the total sales price for these businesses, the growth of that from 2017 to 2018, you see a 26% increase. So that's a pretty good increase of total combined sales price, all the businesses added up. But the other metric that tells the full picture is the number of businesses sold. So we actually increased the number of content sites that we sold by 26%. So the exact same amount as the sales price. So these businesses aren't exactly getting bigger that we're seeing on the marketplace, but they are selling much faster. And one of the reasons why I think we saw that increase in total number of businesses being sold on a marketplace is because of Amazon playing around with their commission structure, weirding out a few affiliates, like, I don't know if I like this now, maybe I should get rid of it before something bad happens. And then also the Google updates, right, with the fairly big core algorithm changes that happened last year and continually are happening this year. I think an update just went live like literally 2 days ago, maybe a day ago now for you people in the US time zones. But so those two things, those two forces combined, have led to a lot of these content site sellers like, I need to get rid of this asset before something happens and try to get the most as I can. On the other side, you have buyers more than ever coming in wanting these sites. So as more buyers learn about what we're doing and more sellers are converted to buyers, and as the dust kind of settles and things kind of go back to status quo, if you will, I think my prediction is the supply of the content sites will begin to drop a little bit more as people regain faith that, like the world isn't falling down as often as people hear from all these groups, SEO is dead at every algorithmic change, as they realize that they can hold on to it and make more money. I think that supply will dwindle, but the actual demand is going to continue to grow. And we saw that demand grow just by looking at the average number of days on market when you combine the increase in the supply. So I think we are heading towards a pretty good seller's market. I don't know when exactly that will hit, but I do predict that the multiples for these sites will rise because of it.
Okay, so you're saying that the supply rose for you, which makes sense because your business is getting bigger, so more people are aware of the business model and stuff like that. But also your team is getting bigger too, so you guys can close more deals. And I mean, even Human Proof Designs is getting bigger too. So we're all kind of in that same thing, and there's more people becoming aware of the fact that this is a beautiful business model. Actually, there's folks in our audience who are making more money on the side than they do at their job, and they keep their job because they like their job, and there's really no reason to quit because it's a fairly passive business there. All right, so we understand now that the content site supplies are going up and demand is going up now. So what about let's dive a little bit into like drop shipping sites and lead gens and things like that. What kind of trends are you seeing there?
So with lead gen, we actually group that with the content sites. So because they're often ran very similar to content sites. So a lot of the trends that you'll see, if you read the report, we like roll it up into like one big category across all different subcategories. And so the content section is where you want to go for lead gen. So very similar kind of trends. The one thing I will say about lead gen is often your earning potential with the lead gen sites are lower than versus like your traditional content site. And the reason why is because a lot of the lead gen sites, they kind of pigeonhole themselves in a sense where like maybe you're doing lead gen for, I don't know, roofers in San Diego, and your website is all, roofersandiego.com. There's really not a lot of room for you to grow that site, right? Like in that asset is pretty cut and dry what it will be and what its market potential is going to be. So you're probably going to get a lower multiple for that. Now, if you're doing lead gen in a directory style, where it's roofersusa.com, something like that, where you can do literally every suburb in the USA for lead gen, now you're looking at a much higher, much more profitable lead gen model that you could sell for a better valuation. Probably get some crazier deals going on there than your just local lead gen site. But overall, lead gen sites have very similar trends to content sites. With dropshipping though, so dropshipping is an interesting one. So on like the multiple has grown for dropshipping. Let me just pull it down here. Scrolling through my own 84-page report.
You don't know this off by heart?
I wish. It'd make me have seen much more practice, right? So for dropshipping, the average sales multiple in 2017 was 23.8, so pretty close to 24x. And in 2019, we saw that rise to 25.1. But the thing with dropshipping businesses and this is tend to stay the same, it's dropped a little bit. So sales multiple has gone up by 5%, which is great. Average days on market has gone down by 14%, which sounds fantastic when you look at the percentage. But the one thing you got to be aware of with dropshipping business is that 14%. In 2017, the average number of days on market was 73 days. And the average number of days on market in 2018 was 62 days, almost 63 days. So you're looking at a much longer sales cycle. And the reason why is because dropshipping businesses, they often don't have a very good moat. And when I'm talking about moats, I mean it's much easier for your competition to come in and just copy the business. They see, oh, you're drop shipping rugs. I can see the supplier. I'm going to go get that supplier contract just like you. And now I'm going to run Facebook ads to my Shopify store that looks strangely very similar to yours, and probably steal your ads through a Facebook spy tool or something like that. And in about a day, they have your exact same business model, your exact same business, basically, all set up for them. And that's one of the issues that we run into when it comes to selling drop shipping businesses. So if you really want to make a go at it with drop shipping, you got to create something that is, relatively unique, that puts you in a unique position. I mean, the same could be said with affiliate sites to a lesser extent too, but since with affiliate sites you have the SEO typically coming in as the asset, the thing that's like makes you stand above all the competition. It's not looked at down as much as on dropshipping, because most dropshipping, they have a good enough margin where you can run paid traffic, and that's what causes people to copy so quickly. But if you can create a community around your brand and a solid, good brand that does, like people love and they come back to, where it's not just them coming through your Facebook ads to buy, you actually have repeat customers, you can show all that. That's like a super good sign that a buyer would be interested in your dropshipping business, especially if you have an email list that you are regularly promoting, both not just new products, but actual content that your community loves. All that kind of stuff goes into making your dropshipping business much more sellable, and it puts you leagues ahead of the vast majority of dropshipping stores out there if you do this, because most of them just won't do it. They just will run the Facebook ads, take the money, and then when they try to sell, we can't sell them. So that is one thing to be aware of. One thing we've pivoted from is we no longer do Alibaba Express as a sourcing supplier. And the reason why is those businesses tend to have pretty low quality products and even a lower moat than most dropshipping stores. So we just got rid of them. So if you're sourcing from Alibaba, unfortunately, you won't be able to sell on our platform. But I'm sure you will be able to find a private seller somewhere, or a private buyer rather, somewhere for that. So those are some of the stuff we see with dropshipping. I think for your audience, as they build their own stores, something that they should consider that a lot of dropshippers don't, but I think it is really intelligent way to increase your overall value, is to consider a hybrid model. So in e-commerce, which we've sold a ton of e-commerce businesses, well over 100 last year alone, you should consider doing a hybrid model. So a mixture of sourcing your own product and doing drop shipping. And the way you should start out is 100% drop shipping. So you consider it like a laboratory, right? You have 100 different drop shipping products that you're selling. You see 5 products that are just killing it. They're skyrocketing with sales. They're great margins. Those products you should look at sourcing yourself, because your dropshipping store just proved the concept of this product. So now you can go out and source something, hopefully that's even better, a better version of that product, and increase your overall margin. Now, you should never get rid of dropshipping completely, in my opinion. And the reason why is they work so beautifully together. You do the dropshipping first, so you don't spend a huge amount on inventory costs. You see the product that sells the best, you source it, now you get better margins. You already have the funnels already set up from selling the dropship version of it. But now when they go to buy that source product, you also have accessories that accentuate that product, or make it better in some way, or is related to it. And those accessories could all be drop shipped. So if you sourced a coffee grinder or a coffee machine or something like that, you could have an upsell when they go to add that to their cart for different kinds of coffee beans from around the world that are actually just dropship products. You don't source them yourself. And that's a really powerful way to increase your average order value, or AOV, as a lot of e-commerce people call it.
Awesome. Those are stellar tips. Have you ever
I only
seen
give stellar tips, Kelvin.
have you ever seen like an affiliate and dropship hybrid model?
So I haven't seen it in the affiliate space. I have seen it with the Amazon FBA space. I take that back. I think I might have seen it in the dropshipping space, but they're very rare when they do happen. But with Amazon FBA, you see them. I think that's actually a fantastic business model, and it's the same concept as the dropshipping laboratory. To say someone bought a site from Human Proof Designs, right? They start getting all that traffic coming in to their affiliate products, and they can see in their Amazon dashboard which product is selling the best that is, obviously related to their site. You don't want to have a site about dogs and you see the tracking that someone bought a TV. That doesn't mean you should go source the TV, right? You should buy the product that's related to your site. So like say you were selling dog collars or leashes or whatever, and you see one type of leash that's very powerful, like that gets sold a lot, you go source that leash, and now it's on Amazon.com through their FBA program. And when they come to your affiliate site, to your top 10 long distance leashes or whatever the article is, you can have your leash, the one you source, as the number one spot. So now you get to double dip in both the affiliate earnings and your actual margin from selling it on the FBA product. So that is something we do see. We recently actually just sold a site that was just like that for I think it was $435,000 and got above a 30x multiple. So it is a way to increase your multiple dramatically, because again, you're doing the two things I just mentioned, right? You're diversifying revenue both from your FBA and from Amazon Associates, but now you're also diversifying your traffic, because you have SEO coming in, but you also have Amazon's organic coming in, and you also have the SEO traffic from your site able to launch your new products quicker in Google's algorithm, or Amazon's algorithm rather. So if your affiliate site is collecting emails, every time you launch a new product on Amazon's FBA program, you can send all that traffic to an article on your site that has the affiliate link announcing the new product. And every time you get all this outside traffic buying your Amazon product, Amazon will see that and like, oh man, people are loving this product, we're going to start promoting it. So then Amazon starts promoting your product as well. So it's a very cool strategy, and it helps you with your valuation in a lot of ways.
Do you know if you can get the do you get rewarded for an affiliate commission if you are directing traffic to your own product?
As of right now, yes, you do. So that's where the double dip comes from. So you get to get the affiliate income and your actual FBA product margin, and of course anything else they buy within 24 hours.
Yeah, I would definitely second you on that being like a really, really, really powerful business model. I had just heard an interview with I think his name is Syed Belki.
I know Syed, yeah.
Yeah, so he owns WP Beginner, which is which is like the biggest WordPress beginner site essentially.
That's how I know him.
Yeah, but he also owns Opt-in Monster and like a whole bunch of different plugins.
Yeah.
So he uses that website to essentially generate leads for his plugin business, and that's really the exact same thing that people are doing with affiliate sites, but driving back traffic to their FBA businesses, which is just incredible. And so, are the multiples higher for those sorts of deals?
Oh, absolutely. There's actually so in the report, we give the average, right? Let me scroll up here. Yeah, so in the report we give you the average, but one thing you got to understand about the average is, since we sell so many businesses, like this report is based off close to 500 businesses we sold in the last 2 years, that lower quality businesses are going to skew that average, right? So we put a disclaimer underneath each one of those average boxes showing you the multiples of businesses that were higher than the average. What happened there. So with Amazon, there was, where is it? It's a little bit further up. I believe it was actually a 39x one that was exactly what we were just talking about: Amazon FBA and Amazon Associates. And it was a small site too. It wasn't huge. This is especially a weird one. Mixed monetization site that is both AdSense, Amazon FBA, and Amazon Associates. It sold for $58,000 at a 47x multiple, which is huge. So that goes to show you, even on the lower scale of the price tags, the sub 100K businesses, you can get a very aggressive multiple if you're doing the things I just talked about, where you're diversifying traffic, diversifying revenue. In this case, he's diversifying it through 3 different ways. Probably had an email list that he's building to also promote the FBA products. So he's also diversifying his traffic, not just with Amazon Organic and Amazon PPC potentially, but also with his SEO to his best guides, and of course to that email list that's now a captured audience. So that is an example of like a sub 100K business getting a 47x multiple, because they did so well at mitigating those critical points of failure that I talked about earlier.
Awesome. 47x is huge.
Yeah, it's great.
Congrats to that.
It's one of the highest ones we ever did. The highest content site we ever did, if your audience is wondering, is 1.8 million at a 58x.
1.8 million at a 58x multiple.
Yeah. So that one had an interesting story because it was trending like several thousands to like over tens of thousands of dollars of new income it was making every single month. So that is like the one story of a site that I've seen in the last 3 years where niche really mattered. You know, a lot of people will say like, "Oh, what's the perfect niche?" And usually it's anything you want for the most part. Like as long as you make an educated guess, like. I wouldn't ever say go follow your passion because that can often lead to things that don't make a lot of money, unfortunately. But if you go into a niche with a lot of different products, usually you're going to be fine. But this was the one niche that I saw where that one actually mattered, that it was what the niche was. So
awesome. Is I'm like, should I ask him what this niche is? Like, is that like
I can't tell you. It's in the finance niche. I can say that.
Okay, yeah. Finance is interesting for sure. All right, so let's talk about. You've got a pretty unique section. It's the myths, these myths that people have about buying or selling online businesses. What are those, and what can you tell us?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different myths out there. I think the most common one in the content site space is probably that PBN sites are too risky. So your audience is probably pretty familiar with PBNs, I assume, private blog networks, and all that good stuff. So it's funny, and again, this goes back to what I was saying to you earlier about how sellers and buyers, they often they come from these two different worlds a lot of times with different mindsets. So I have friends that are sellers with us that are like shocked that buyers are buying their sites that have PBNs. Like I use PBNs, I want to do that. That's way too risky, But the buyer, they're thinking about it from a totally different mindset. They look at this site, and if they're a savvy buyer, they actually like the fact that you have a PBN because they know they can negotiate you down on the sales price because they know you don't believe in buying a site with a PBN. So they're going to negotiate you down, do a little bit of those Jedi mind tricks, get your business at a discount. And for them, they could buy, like say they bought 10 sites with PBNs on them. And out of those 10 sites, 6 of them crashed. They're okay with that because those 4 sites, from the capital that they're using, they're looking at it as more as an investor. The dividends of those 4 sites that are successful are still astronomical from anywhere else that they were getting, and covers the loss of the other 6. And those other 6 that lost traffic, like sometimes it happens where like your traffic literally goes down to 0, like a penalized or something like that. But usually you still have a trickle of it coming in, and you're still making a trickle of money. So a lot of times just that trickle of money is comparable to other investments that you might have made in stocks or real estate, right? So from that perspective alone, they're into it. We have buyers that buy sites with PBNs all the time, and they're repeat buyers. They would not be doing this strategy if it was dumb, right? A lot of times what they'll do too with those PBNs is they'll slowly replace the PBNs with white hat links. And so now they just got the business great ROI. They probably did seller financing with you. They got the business at a discount, and now it's a white hat site over the next few months. So that's an example of both sellers and buyers thinking that PBNs might be too risky. I actually did a huge report on PBNs. This was like over a year ago, called the risk and rewards of PBNs. Also extremely long, 11,000 words. I'm very long-winded. So enjoy the study. But I looked at 5 PBN sites that we sold and 5 white hat sites that we sold without PBNs, and we'll track what happened over a 6-month period.
What actually? Well, beyond PBNs, is there anything else that might be relevant?
Yeah. So again, I want to bring up the average multiple thing. Like, if you're looking to sell your site, you might be looking at the average multiple as like, my site has to be at least this. Well, it doesn't has to be that, because you remember, keep in mind that's an average. In fact, we had a buyer who looked at that average and he's like, "Wow, I'm overpaying." And they're like, "Well, no, you're not, because you're buying higher quality sites. You're buying sites that are above average. So if you're a buyer as well, consider that if the multiple is higher, especially if you're using like a reputable broker, like us or another reputable broker, assume that the business is probably higher quality as well. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not always worth it trying to negotiate down just to get the actual average value or average multiple. And that kind of goes into like another myth that I see quite often, or at least a mindset, is that people think that the only way you can get an undervalued business is based off price. So they think that they have to negotiate based off price, but that is not always the case. There's a lot of ways to get an undervalued business that's outside of pricing. So if you see a site that has a good multiple, it's a high quality site, but the site itself might have like super ugly design, there could be a huge room for CRO there that the seller never thought of. So that it's not uncommon for us to see a buyer buy a content site and do CRO and see a 20% lift in their net profit. So if you're doing $10,000 net, you do CRO, which doesn't take very long to set up and it's completed within like 2 or 3 weeks once the tests are ran. Sometimes sooner, you can see an extra increase of income by $2,000 if you get that 20% lift. So that's one way, is to look at business. If you want to get undervalued business, think bigger than just price. There's a lot more out there. Look for things that the seller is just not good at. Maybe they didn't optimize everything to the moon. Maybe their on page is terrible, which most people's on page is terrible. So you could probably improve that dramatically using things like Page Optimizer Pro and get a big bump in traffic. So consider all these different things. And when you're talking to a seller, just ask them, like, what are, some mistakes you made on this business? Because a lot of times sellers, they have this like idea in their head that their business has to be 100% perfect for a buyer to find that business attractive. But the truth is, a buyer wants to see the warts and see the failures and the mistakes, because a lot of times the opportunity for the buyer is in the fact that you made that mistake, or you just aren't good at optimizing on page or doing CRO and all that kind of stuff. So that's something to consider, both when you're both buying and selling a business. If you want to get an undervalued business or sell your business for more, it doesn't have to be perfect, and oftentimes a buyer doesn't want it to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to fill in the rest of those myths before asking you this other question, because one part of the PBN conversation, which I thought was really, really, really interesting, and maybe hopefully not just for myself, but hopefully for the people listening too, was that part where you talked about the seller essentially saying to himself, "Oh, I don't like, who's going to buy my site? It's got PBNs on it," whereas the seller is thinking, "Oh, this guy thinks that he can't sell it, so I'm going to drive down the price." And that's kind of like the psychology and tactics that go on for buying and selling almost anything, but we're going to talk specifically about like affiliate sites, let's say. And obviously that's the value of a broker, is because you understand and you see.
Right. We help make sure if you're the PBN seller guy, you don't get like screwed by this very, very good negotiator on the other side.
Yeah. So I actually want to dive into that a little bit more. I think, like, could you give us more scenarios where are these like interesting psychological tactics that the buyers have that the sellers have over the buyers?
Yeah, I say when it comes to negotiations, a lot of times the buyer is the person that has more of the upper hand. It really depends, of course, on the buyer. If it's a brand new buyer, obviously you won't have that much advantage over the seller. But buyers are really good. They don't just study negotiation tactics, which obviously those are very helpful. There's books like Never Split the Difference. I forget who wrote it, but like that's a super powered book on negotiations. And I recommend it for anyone getting into buying or selling. But buyers, they really look at the deal structure of the business, and that's where they get a lot of huge wins. So let's say there's that old adage in investing that you make your money when you buy. I think there's a real estate quote, but a lot of that is true in our world as well. So let's say you had a $500,000 Amazon affiliate site you're selling. A buyer comes in, offers you $400,000, and that's the closest offer you've gone with a $100,000 earnout. You'll give you 400K up front, 100K earnout over, I don't know, 12 months. So usually they're pretty short time frames. That in this space, when you get above the 250K range, finding liquid buyers is much more difficult. So if you want to sell for full list price, then you might have to take a bigger earnout. If you want to sell for more money up front, then you might have to take a lower sales price, right? So that's the stuff going through a seller's head, and the buyer knows this, and the buyer also knows that the vast majority of sellers are not going to charge them any interest on these earnouts. So out of that $100,000 that is technically seller finance, that's a 0% interest-free loan to a buyer. So the buyer, he always wants to ask you, will you do an earnout? Because it's in his best interest. Who doesn't want a free money loan, right? With the seller, though, you could ask, like, okay, I'll give you this earnout, but I want this interest on the earnout. And that might make the buyer like, well, screw it, I'm just going to get full list price then. Because he was just trying to get the free money loan, right? But then you add in the interest, and now he's going to pay over that list price with the interest. He might just do the full money offer. Or he might say, well, look, how about this? We don't do the earnout, but I do 450. So by you just asking for interest on an earnout, that is your risk as the seller, right? Like, you are taking on risk to do the earnout. Just by you asking for interest, you might be able to get that buyer to either forego an earnout completely with a higher amount of upfront money, or pay the full list price just because he doesn't want to deal with it. Or you could get the person to agree to that interest rate and get a little bit more for taking on the extra risk. So those are some examples of things that can happen. I highly recommend your listeners to read another long-winded blog post of mine called The Definitive Guide to Deal Structuring that goes over all these different kinds of deal structures that buyers and sellers can do. It's really more of a buyer post because that's like the toolkit of a buyer, but I think it's a very powerful thing for sellers to know when they start getting into mid 6 figures and 7-figure businesses that they're selling.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that there's just not that many buyers at the higher prices. So,
well, it's not that there's not as many buyers. The thing is, like, it's just financing is so difficult in our space. Like, you can't go to Wells Fargo and be like, hey, I want to buy a $500,000 Amazon affiliate site. They're going to be looking at you like, what are you talking about? Get out of this office. They're not going to give you a loan. So a lot of times cash is king, right? You have to be liquid. So that's where all these deal structuring it often comes in, is because of the lack of financing. Like, you don't really see financing in our space until you get above like the $10 million mark. So ironically, it's almost harder to sell a $5-6 million business than it is to sell a $12-13 million business.
Do you find that there are any, I guess, like upcoming financial tools, we'll call them, that are coming up?
I wish there isn't much for a space, man. There's a couple for FBA, but they mainly do inventory. I think they're called Lenvo is one of them. And they mainly loan on inventory growth as you're scaling your FBA business, but they'll also loan based off acquisition too. I think the interest rates are quite high last I looked, though. There's obvious sources like peer-to-peer lending that could be something that you can do. There's also SBAs. So probably the biggest like mainstream financial tool if you're in America and you're buying if you're a USA citizen and you're buying a USA business, then there's a chance you could use the Small Business Administration Loan, so SBA loan. That's starting to come more into our space, but still pretty rare. And then, of course, there's things like HELOCs, like home equity line of credit on your own house. You can use that to finance a deal if you want, which you never should do if you're not willing to 100% lose the investment. We always say that, like, you can make great money doing this, but you should never put your own emergency funds at risk. You should always be money you're willing to lose. I'm not saying you will lose it, but you should go in thinking you would be okay if you did.
Mm-hmm. She asked, I think it's a girl, she asked a little bit earlier an additional question, which is, are certain niches more sellable than others? And do certain niches get a higher multiple than others? If so, and why?
Yeah, so kind of what I was saying earlier, like that 58X deal, that is the only site I can definitely say the niche was important. Most of the time, the niche is just not that important. Like what you want in like in a niche is something that has a lot of different products you can sell, a lot of different offers. Ideally, it's something that people are either like absolutely need or they're somewhat passionate about, like a hobbyist kind of sport or something like that. Those are all good style niches. Now you'll get buyers that want very specific niches, and that that happens. But overall, I wouldn't concern yourself too much with a niche. And I've only seen it once where the niche really added value to the business, like in terms of the actual valuation.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess just coming from my standpoint, I definitely think the niche is important just in terms of like understanding that if you're going to build a site and you're going to go in there, you should probably understand at least the limits of it. Some niches just have
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I'll add to that, like you could start off small, right? Like say it's I don't know, ski goggles, and expand it into other ski stuff later on. As long as there is a good branded domain where it's not like bestskis2018.com or something like that. If you do it like winterhero.com or something like a cool brand, then you can eventually expand outside of just skis and do snowboarding, other winter sports, or really any sports as it becomes a bigger and bigger sports site. So that's one like idea to switch your mindset on, limiting yourself to one niche.
Awesome. One more final question really is that if you could kind of narrow down, if somebody's going to come and they're going to look and analyze a site to buy, what are like maybe some top areas that they should be concerned with in terms of getting higher ROI? Like where's the ROI opportunities in looking at a content site most of the time? And I think this is going to be helpful for folks who are also selling their site and they're looking at that from the perspective of either doing it themselves or maybe negotiating that as part of here's the opportunities to do that. So where's the ROI opportunities?
I say the number one area is definitely conversion rate optimization. So if I was going through the process of buying a content site, my framework after I acquire it would be to get CRO started as soon as possible. If there's no display ads in the info content, I would add those as quickly as possible as well to get those two taken care of. And during this phase, during the first month, I would probably do really hardcore keyword research into other niches around it. So like that ski goggle example that I just gave, I would start looking at snowboarding equipment and other articles and really take advantage of that age domain to order a bunch of content and try to get that up as quickly as possible. So I've seen many different studies done on content freshness, and while freshness is important, it's not necessarily like you're not going to get hit any negative points by publishing 500 articles at once versus a drip feed. The only thing you'll get is the disadvantage of not letting those 500 articles rank as quickly as they can in Google by you drip feeding them out over time. So there's really no advantage of doing that in a lot of ways. So I try to get that out as quickly as possible. And I would try to, if there's no email list, I would try to build an email list as quickly as possible too. So within the first month, I should have increased ideally the net profit from the CRO and the display ads by like 20 to 25%. And then in the next two to 3 months, all that new content I created should start ranking and start making a lot more money. And now I have an email list that should be bringing people back. So I create marketing automation there, which is something that's almost never done. People have an email list that they never email. Like we see that pretty often. Yeah. So like, everyone in our business, they say the money's in the list, right? And we're usually talking about our email list, but we never email them. So it's kind of like saying like, we know going to the gym will make me fit and in shape, but I'm just not going to do it. Like we know what to do, we just don't do it. So those are like kind of the rough roadmap of what I would follow acquiring a content site.
Awesome. Yeah, just like a small addition is that even though I'm a content person by heart and stuff like that, but just now knowing and understanding more about online businesses, I certainly think more in terms of a funnel. Like if I'm going to go after a niche, it's got to be like, what is the funnel I can build? And that's what it's good. And maybe it's all, maybe it's attributed and you get that traffic from SEO and things like that, but it all goes towards, specific products that you're going to promote and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that mindset.
Greg, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the HPD audience?
We've been talking a lot about content sites. So I guess the last thing I would like to end it on, related to that for your audience in particular, is when you are building out a content site, a lot of people, they talk about niche site, authority site, all that kind of stuff. And while those terms are fine, I would challenge your audience to think bigger. Think about their content site as a mini media company. Like you're like running a little mini CNN or space.com or whatever it is, like a news website or whatever. And by looking at your business as a media company, you're certainly going to make 1,000 different decisions, like little tiny decisions that all add up over time. And you'll be able to do things that are far beyond just, your typical SEO niche site as you grow, as you build your email list, as you build up your monetization. You might even start running ads to your own content because you built what you were just talking about, Kelvin, actual funnels in your email marketing automation that drip out campaigns to different guides, info, and maybe even courses or other affiliate offers that have a higher margin than Amazon Associate, which some of them can only be promoted in email. So if you look at your company, your content site as a media company, I think the growth potential there is almost unlimited for a lot of different niches out there. Certainly much more unlimited than thinking of it as a niche or authority site, in my opinion.
Awesome. Definitely agree with that. 100%. They should be thinking bigger at the end of the day.
Think big, man.
Well, guys, thanks everyone for joining on live onto the broadcast, and everybody that's listening to this on the podcast there. So I never end these without sounding too awkward. So
I have the same curse. Don't worry, Kelvin.
Take it easy, guys. We'll see you all next week.